Okay, our guest today is Cortney Harding, and she has a new book coming out October 7th called The Spatial Race. And I've known Cortney for quite a while because as CEO of VictoryXR, we work a lot with Meta, and Cortney was the person that sort of shepherded us through that whole Meta process, which is a big organization. You need somebody to do that. So I know that Cortney is an expert in virtual reality, spatial learning, all of those things. And so we're excited to talk to her about her new book. So Cortney, why don't you start us off by just giving us a quick overview of what the book is about?
Sure. So the Spatial Race is a look at the next 10 years of technology and specifically focused on spatial computing and artificial intelligence, although it does fold in other frontier technologies like blockchain. But the idea is really we're going to move from a world where this technology right now is what I call lean forward. So you have to actively put on a headset. You have to actively prompt an AI to a lean back experience where you put on glasses just like you look at your phone every day or every minute of every day at this point. And the AI is just running in the background all the time, serving you contextual information without you actually having to do anything. So it's really setting out this vision for the next 10 years and then telling people how to actually think about it and build for it and make something so that they're prepared for when this actually happens.
And why is October of this year the right moment to release this book?
Because I had this idea for this book for a long time. I had a folder of ideas and drafts and things, and I futzed around for a long time. And finally, the publisher said to me, "You have 6 months, write this thing." And so I did, and I responded to that pressure. And I think October is a good time because people are coming back to school, they're coming back to work, they're kind of over their summer break. And I think they're ready for sort of Q4 work and then Q1 of 2026 planning. So it's a good time to set this up and set these ideas up so that people can then start thinking about them and building them into next year.
Great. And so in the book, you argue that spatial computing will reshape work and learning and daily life, the whole thing. Can you think of one near-term use case that people might underestimate? And what gives you the data behind thinking that this will come to pass in the near term?
So I think it's very interesting right now to look at the return to office and how more and more organizations, Microsoft most recently, are doing return to office when there is a great solution right there with using spatial computing for work, productivity, and collaboration. So I think that is probably one of the most undersold solutions this technology provides. I have a Vision Pro that I use, if not daily, most days for calls, for collaboration, for work. I use my Quest headset for the same thing. And I really think the future of work in the next several years, and starting pretty soon, will be anchored around working together in a spatial environment. And what that does is it opens up opportunities for a lot of new talent. So I have a friend who is an expert in her field, a true expert, and she's had 2 interviews with 2 big companies recently. And at the end, they've said basically some form of, "You're perfect for this. When can you relocate?" Now, she can't. She has a family, she owns a home, she has a spouse who has a job, she has children who are in school. It's not easy to pick up and move across the country when you are an established professional. And yet these companies are cutting off their noses to spite their faces when it comes to talent retention and talent acquisition. And so using this technology to open up a new world of work and collaboration will solve a lot of those problems. And the technology is pretty much there. It's just people need to start really thinking about it and using it.
Yeah, that's a really important point. VictoryXR, we are headquartered in Iowa,
Yep.
Founded in Iowa. And I knew from the very beginning we would not be able to find the very specific skill sets that were needed to build a virtual reality and an AI company. And so our people are all over the place, and it works well. Some people think that you can't pull off a remote office, that people just won't work. And maybe it helps that we're only 25 people, but nevertheless, we have, I think, if not the best team in the world, one of the best teams in the world for learning and spatial learning. And that's because we follow that exact example. And to the extent that we can use these technologies, we do. Obviously, we're in the space of learning and education. Where do you see that whole space going, and particularly with the integration of AI into spatial learning?
So I have an entire section of the book on this and the need that we will have to radically rethink education, especially K-12 education, but also university education. So K-12 education, unfortunately, has become very rote, and you have a lot of people that are teaching to tests. This is not anything negative about individual teachers. They do amazing work. I come from a family of educators and I respect what they do very, very much. And they are working under very hard conditions. But the idea that you have to just teach to a test, that you have to teach everyone the same curriculum, that's outdated and that needs to change. So the model that I'm most interested in is the Texas Alpha School. And the Texas Alpha School, basically, every morning there's 2 hours of instruction. So every student has to know the fundamentals. They need to know reading and writing and arithmetic. But after that instruction, the students have their own self-directed projects, and a lot of those are powered by AI. So they will work with AI tutors, they will work with different programs to build a business or to come up with an idea for a spaceship, whatever their passion is. They can use AI to build around that. Teachers are still very much in place, right? They're controlling the classroom. They're making sure everyone stays on task. They are giving advice and feedback. So the teachers are almost more like docents. So it's kind of the Oxford University model. It's funny, I hear people talk about how Texas Alpha School is this brand new thing. And then I'm like, no, one of the oldest universities in the world kind of does the exact same thing, maybe with not as much technology focus. And I think that sort of way of thinking about things is gonna really have to be infused throughout education in the next 10 years, because just training students to do rote tasks, like those are all going to be replaced. Training students to be critical thinkers, to be builders, to work for things they're passionate about, they're interested in, that is going to be really the future of education. And that's really going to be a big transition, but it's going to be an exciting transition as well. And the same for university. Students need to be self-directed. In the age of AI, being self-directed and curious and coming up with problems that you need to solve, right? Those are things that are going to be very, very valuable skills. And so we really need to reorient education around learning those skills as opposed to basic memorization and things like that.
Yeah, I think obviously the work we've done with HoloTutor, which is our AI tutor platform, we think that hopefully that will give every school the opportunity to have 2 hours of instruction with a personalized AI tutor that adapts on the fly. And so that, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly the model. But it can't just be text-based. It has to be spatial and 3D and include video and two-way conversations and all of that. So, you know, the next 5 years are going to be transformative. Glad you're at the front of it, and we hope to be at the front of it as well. So your earlier work emphasized virtual reality for social change.
Mm-hmm.
How does the spatial race extend that, perhaps around ethics, accessibility, that type of thing?
So one of the things that I'm very committed to is making sure that this technology is available to everyone. And one thing that we absolutely have to avoid is the uneven distribution of this technology. And I'm on the World Economic Forum's AI Governance Committee, and that's a lot of the work that I've done in that space, is making sure that this is equally distributed. So I don't want it to just be people in Silicon Valley or New York or London or, you know, whatever, Shanghai, whatever tech center you want. I want this technology to benefit everyone, to make everyone's lives better. And in the book, I talk about sort of the VR-powered robotics revolution. And the way I see that playing out is having AI-powered robots right now is still pretty far out in the future, right? We still need a lot more training data. We still need a lot more work to do that. But in the short term, and you are seeing this particularly in Japan, it is possible to power a robot while wearing a headset. It's basically like playing a video game. And thinking of that, A, that could create a lot more job opportunities for people in different markets. And B, that'll create a lot more worker safety. So there was an article in the New York Times last week about delivery drivers in Rome, delivery cyclists. And they actually had to stop working because it was too hot. And those jobs are dangerous, those jobs are unpleasant, and they are often the only way a lot of people can survive. So if we look at the social change aspect there, having those people in an air-conditioned room with a headset on is they still get to keep working. They still have the jobs that they need, but it's a lot safer. It's a lot more comfortable. And if a robot gets hit by a bus, I mean, that's a bummer for the robot company and whoever doesn't get their delivery order, but who cares at the end of the day versus a human being, which obviously is a huge loss. So I think really sort of looking at that social impact side of things and thinking about how we can incorporate this technology to make everyone's lives better and make sure it's equally distributed is going to be a really important thing going forward.
Yeah, you know, one of people don't realize it, but one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous job in the United States is agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of young people and people who may not be paying attention working with heavy equipment and these things. And so a lot of that we're seeing by products from John Deere and others are being roboticized. You know, it's interesting. You said that the AI robots are a long ways off.
Mm-hmm.
I actually expect to see them start showing up in the workplace doing basic tasks in the second half of 26, looking at, you know, I was looking at the video of Optimus being able to do laundry, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get a robot to vacuum and do laundry and all those menial tasks at time, it'll be like the 1950s, people buying televisions.
Well, it'll be like the Jetsons, right? That was Rosie. I think for basic, simple tasks, we are close. I think for tasks that are a little bit more complicated, where you are, for instance, navigating a city, having to pay attention, right? I mean, Waymo is coming to New York very soon. Waymo is already active in a couple of cities. So I think we're seeing growth, but I think in terms of overall, it's still a ways off. And part of that, and I have a friend who's starting a company around this actually, and I'm helping him out, is just this training data, right? Like we don't have enough training data for these robots yet, but people in headsets piloting the robots can A, still be employed, and B, be building out that training data.
Yeah, you know, that's really, really interesting because we're a little bit off topic here, but it's interesting because in our other company, Victory Store, where we have these, you know, $250,000 to $500,000 printing machines and cutting machines. I think that there's going to be a marketplace for someone to take a robot, an AI robot, and train them how to use the HP 5000 or the Gerber cutting machine. And then that software, because somebody's got to train it. And we know that Tesla, whoever's building the robot, it's not going to train all of these. So I think there will be a whole cottage industry of training robots with whatever data, or actually, I think potentially just showing them how to do it, saving the data. So,
well, we've been doing this forever, and I know this is a real thing, even though I feel like sometimes I hallucinated it. But back in the early 2000s, there was a service called Google 411. So this was pre-smartphone. So what you could do with Google 411 was dial it on your flip phone, and you would ask for information about, is this business open? What are their hours? What is the address, right? Just basic information that you would get from otherwise like a phone book or a directory. Now, I used that a few times when I didn't know when a business would open or something. And I kind of thought it was curious, but I didn't really think too deeply about it until somebody told me that this was not just a public service on Google's behalf. This was a way for Google to collect pronunciation data, so that when they had Google Maps and all of these other things, it would give you directions that accurately pronounced local streets. So in New York City, it's not Houston Street, it's Houston Street. In Portland, Oregon, it's not Couch Street, it's Cooch Street, right? And you can see sort of that transition and how people were just using the service, training the data. I mean, how many of us have done captchas where it's like, how many of these images have birds in them, right? And so I think, you know, we're already training this data. The entire internet is just a field of training data for these platforms. And yeah, I think as we move into more robotics, it's going to, again, be like, just let's build up the data.
That is so fascinating. You're exactly right. You know, we have Nevada, Iowa, instead of Nevada. We have Milan, Illinois, instead of Milan, Illinois. So many of those. So Buena Vista College instead of Buena Vista. So anyway, hey, almost my last question. Let's think in terms of practical implementation. If a Fortune 500 and a startup each wanted to win the spatial race, thinking in terms of a short-term playbook, like a 90-day playbook, what would how would they execute on getting up and running and moving forward in this space?
So the first thing any company needs to do is take a step back and come up with a problem statement. So I have been in so many rooms where people have said the following to me: we need to do VR. We need to do AI. No, you don't. You need to solve a problem using those technologies where they are appropriate. So, there's a data point that's been bounced around a ton in the last couple of weeks. I'm sure you've seen it. About 95% of AI projects on the corporate level are failing. I don't like that term. People are learning, people are building. That is not failure. However, a lot of that, the project's not working or not working in time, can come down to the fact that they weren't scoped correctly, that people either misunderstood the capabilities of the technology, or they misunderstood the problem they were trying to solve, or they just built something to build something and put out a press release and call it a day. So I think the first thing is, what is a problem that you can work on solving that this technology can help you solve? And then you build from there, and you come up with really good KPIs and really good measurement metrics, and you are very agile as you build. And you just start chipping away at these problems and measuring everything you do. And then eventually you empower other people throughout your organization to do the same. Another thing, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is there is this very strange dissonance in corporate America that I've seen between company leadership saying AI is the future, we have to do AI, it's so exciting, we're spending all this money. And then somebody in the organization saying, great, I used AI to write my newsletter this week. And people are like, oh, scandalized by it. And that's a perfectly fine use case for AI, writing a newsletter. Obviously, you want to fact check it, make sure it's correct, but it's not that complicated. And so I think we're at this weird inflection point right now where people are excited about AI and they're terrified about AI, and they both over and underestimate everything. And so I think a company that wants to get started, A, really needs to break down those barriers around usage of AI, and then B, focus on solving measurable problems rather than just throwing ideas out there and seeing what lands.
What you said about the 95% failure rate. I read that same headline. A lot of people probably did. And my first thought was, when Edison was testing different filaments for the light bulb, were each of those failures? Well, I suppose they were, but really it's putting another brick in the wall, and every moment of learning is another brick in building your house or your building. So that's a very, very good point. So,
I mean, there's three. So the first chapter of the book covers kind of the first .com bubble, and I've been writing about this a lot, because I think there's a lesson in here. So the three biggest failures of the .com bubble in the late 90s and early 2000s were pets.com, Webvan, and Cosmo.com. Pets.com is now Chewy. That's a business that everyone uses, right? Totally mainstream business. Everyone I know is ordering their dog food on there, right? Not even a thing you think about. Webvan is now Instacart or FreshDirect, which is local to New York, or any number of grocery delivery services. Everyone uses those. Totally mainstream business. Cosmo, which I abused mightily during college because it was a delivery service that had no minimum order fee. So luckily they've changed that part of the equation. These new businesses, but that's Uber Eats, that's DoorDash, that's GoPuff, right? Again, all incredibly mainstream businesses that most people, if not everyone, use on a daily basis. So I think when we think about failures, right? These were all massive failures, and there was all this coverage afterwards of the internet's over and it's a bubble and people are fleeing the web. I'm sure you've seen those images. But in fact, no, they just came back around a little bit better the second time. And I think, again, that's really, really critical as we think about this. If you try something and it doesn't work, as long as you learn something from it, it's not a failure. It's only if you don't learn anything from it that it becomes a failure.
My favorite story about that is the federal government, the Department of War, I think at that point, had decided to build their own airplane back in 1917.
Okay.
In 02, whenever that was, they decided to build their own, 1908, to build their own airplane. And so, they tested it and it was a terrible failure. It dropped right into the ocean. It didn't even go 100 yards. And New York Times wrote a very famous editorial that said, humans will not fly for 1,000 years. The government should stop wasting tax dollars on this. And it's just silliness. Less than 90 days later, the Wright brothers get the first plane off the ground, for pennies on the dollar. And so what we know, and it's like the Apple Newton versus the iPad. A lot of times it's timing. A lot of times it's having the right people with the right viewpoint tackling a problem. But it all starts, like you said, with solving the right problem.
Yeah. I mean, Google Glass were ridiculous looking, right? I don't think anyone would argue that those things were not absurd. However, they led to something better, right? So yeah, it's timing, it's execution, it's compute power. A lot of things the first VR headsets for many years didn't work because the compute power wasn't there. Well, now we have the compute power that we need, right? So yeah, I think anytime, my hackles get raised when people are just reflexively anti any sort of technology. Because don't get me wrong, there are serious issues around AI and copyright, AI and data privacy, AI and protecting young people. The New York Times Daily episode this morning was about people who are sort of drawn into these hallucinations with AI. And we need guardrails, we need legislation, we need those things in place. Absolutely, they need to be common sense and well done. But as I was listening to this podcast talking about people with AI hallucinations, I had a boyfriend in high school who listened to that midnight radio show where the guy thought aliens built the pyramids. Now, obviously, this is on a much larger scale, but there's been weird stuff on hallucinations forever, right? AI is just part of it.
Oh yeah, the world of conspiracy theories, and some of them actually come true. So, Cortney, tell us where one might pre-purchase your book, and where do you expect it to show up?
So it comes out October 7th. You can pre-order on Amazon right now. I will give you the link. So you can do that. It's out October 7th, really excited about it. I am doing a couple events. So I'm speaking in Los Angeles at the Fast Future Executive Summit. Fast Future Executive is publishing the book on October 10th. I also have events in New York City later this fall. And depending on when this comes out, I'm speaking at Stanford Law School on October 8th and might do a Bay Area event for the public around that time too, sort of depending on timing. I do a lot of speaking, I do a lot of consulting. I am always interested in speaking to folks and helping them build this. So if folks are interested in any of that, they can reach me at Cortney, Cortney-Harding.com. That's my website. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and all the various and sundry channels.
So website is Cortney-Harding.com.
Yes.
And search The Spatial Race.
Yes.
On Amazon.
Yes.
That seems pretty straightforward. Cortney, thank you for joining us today on the VictoryXR Show. We appreciate it, and I am looking forward to seeing great things for your new book.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to be here.